Hi, hello, welcome back. This is another episode of Devil's Advocate podcast. The main purpose is you to be able to call in and we can debate whatever you decide to. I'm going to discuss a topic for about 2 hours that I've researched properly beforehand. If you haven't already scanned the Linktree that has all of the links to my other social media, there is a form for you to be able to fill out if you are shy. And then there is also my email as well. Last time I was talking about overconsumption as 2 different types of addictions. It was gambling and a shopping addiction, as it is now evolved to essentially gambling as well, with the introduction of more extravagant collections of toys. This week is a little bit different. It is going to be about unethical parenthood. And if you're wondering, you look a little different than usual. You're right, I am, because I forgot my headphones. And some fun tip, in order for me to look like I usually do, my headphones are actually kind of a pretty important part of that, but we don't have them today, so this is what we're working with. Motherhood, fatherhood, Mother's Day, Father's Day. What is unethical parenthood? I've never heard of this. I was actually really surprised when I was doing research for this video. Usually, whenever I get a video idea, I look up on YouTube or I look up other streams or just whatever to see if anyone's ever talked about it. And well, I've seen some people be like, "Don't have children in this economy," or "Oh, people are having less children" or whatever. But I haven't heard of anyone discussing just parenthood, both for animals and children being inherently unethical. And I know this is going to sound like anti-natalism, and I'm going to get into that because it's a very it's a very different thing, in my opinion, at least by my definition of it. So, every child deserves a parent, but does every parent deserve a child? I don't think so. I don't think every parent deserves to have a child, especially if they don't ever check in on them, that's for certain. I'm going to talk about what unethical parenthood is, by my definition. You can have whatever definition you would like to have, but I'm working off of what mine is for this video. So, people talk about parents, unethical parenting traditions, or behaviors in general on how they raise their children, but when I'm talking about unethical parenthood, I'm talking about the entirety of the child's life from 0 to 18 and even beyond that, because if you're viewing having a child, when they're 18, it's not my problem anymore. I don't think that's necessarily a good thing, because you're not in it for the person. It's more like I signed an 18-year contract, now you come help me so I don't end up in a retirement home in 50 years. What it is, what leads to it, the long-term effects of having children, then they should just really go to therapy instead. Difference between unethical parenthood and, like I was talking about earlier, anti-natalism, because some people get those, they get those confused and then they disagree entirely what I have to say, when that's not even what I'm trying to argue. So, before I start with anything else, even regarding the topic, I need to go a little more further into what I define as unethical parenthood. I've already discussed how unethical parenthood is the lifetime of it. It's just not one parenting decision. It's the whole life. It's essentially, because the way parenting is nowadays is kind of antithetical to the whole point of parenting. You're supposed to care about that person and their life and what they want to do and who they want to be, their desires, dreams, and aspirations. And that's not to say there aren't parents out there who do, because there are plenty of people who actually love their kids, I would imagine so. I want to bring up, some people be like, oh, well, how are pets even included in this? Because it also ties into the whole, you have to be able to care for the living being for the lifespan of it. Now, I'm not saying you have to be, taking care of your kid when they're in their 50s and they're still at home. I think that's a little bit, that's a problem, they need to be trying in life. When I'm trying to say you need to, like, care for your kids, I'm not saying enable them. I'm just saying, like, have empathy and care about your child, not coddle them to the point of a failure to launch at that point. But I'm also talking about individuals when it comes to, like, being a pet parent that they don't even know how to properly care for their pet that they supposedly care about and spent a ton of money to buy, and all of these other things to make them look cute, but, like, for example, hamsters, I don't have one myself, but they require a lot more care, and their everyday life it should be significantly different than what the average life of a hamster is, because people don't do their research about hamsters before getting one. And I don't think that's a great thing, because then that leads to animal neglect, and them not being cared for, their lifespans being shortened because they're being neglected, because they got parents who didn't even research into them to be able to take care of them properly. Because I think that's also the case with some people who have children. Like, you don't have to know every disease in the world to, have a child. I think that would be ludicrous to assume for anyone to have that prerequisite. Oh yeah, you gotta be a doctor in order to have a child. Birth rates would be a lot lower than they are right now, and they're still plummeting. Like, let's say you have a hamster, and you want to take care of it and all of that. People aren't gonna pay like a $400 pet bill for a hamster, and that's not. I think that's unethical. I think that's wrong. That's supposed to be your pet child, and you didn't, and now you're just like, well, it's just a hamster. This thing is responsible for, you're responsible for its life, and you chose to not care? That's ridiculous. And I think that's also the case for parents who have children, and then they don't even have the money to, like, pay for healthcare related costs of a child. Like, I know it's unfortunate whenever a child does have health problems, and I'm not saying, like, it's great that they do. But I'm just trying to say, like, if you have a child, or you're, like, planning on having a child, and you can't even plan for the possibility, what if they were born with, like, some medical disease that's gonna cost a lot of money? That's a chance. And then you not being prepared for that can result in them not getting the medical treatment they needed in the first place. And I think that's unethical parenthood. I don't think I think it's pretty unethical to have a child if you can't care for its needs. And that's just the basic needs of healthcare. The basic needs of healthcare. As I was saying, one aspect of unethical parenthood is not having the money to be able to even pay for the child that you have. Not even just their, like, clothes or anything, like healthcare. I mean, their clothes are also pretty applicable, but I feel like there's wiggle room in that. You don't need to have, like, new clothes every week or whatever. I think washers and dryers exist for a reason, but the parents who don't have the money for basic healthcare costs, why are you having a child? Are you just waiting and betting on them, like, oh, they're gonna become like a Hollywood star, or they're gonna do this, and we're gonna run off for their money, Britney Spears' dad ripoff, like, is that what the plan is? I don't understand the thought process. If you can't even afford their medical bills, why are you having it? The child isn't in it, but why? What's the purpose in that? I think some of it's just illusion. Speaking of child stars, you would think as we evolve as a species, humanity and whatnot, you would think that hurting our young to survive would go away as well. I'm not saying this is like, I do have research aspects of this video. This is not a research aspect, this is just a bit, but I'm certain there was probably some terrible parents in the caveman days that just, threw their dog, not their dog, oh my gosh, well, I mean, it's still terrible if you threw your dog to some wild animals, but throwing their children to literal wild animals for their own, to save their own skin, I'm sure there was at least a couple of terrible ones. Of course, those genes probably didn't pass on, but I'm sure it existed back then. But instead of throwing your children to the literal wolves back in the day, now it's just throwing your children to the metaphorical pigs of big media. Because that's what it is, essentially, going to, oh yeah, let's put them in, like, really unsafe conditions where some of that's not nice experiences for people. I mean, if we learned anything from Jeanette McCurdy's book, I'm glad my mom died, her experience being a child actor and not being protected by her mother, that's depressing. That's depressing. And the one person who's supposed to, like, stand up for you, essentially selling your soul to the media to make money off of you. That's so sad. I feel bad for her a lot. Doing that to your children is also, I think that's pretty obvious to be considered unethical parenting, to essentially have your child be your cash cow because you can't stand on your own 2 feet even though you're an adult. The obvious, abusing a child any type of way, very unethical, bad, illegal, not good. But I just want to get that out of the way. That is obviously one of the many reasons it would be an unethical parenthood in general. Now, another example of, like, unethical parenthood is having a child, but they did not want the child. I think it's really good to, like, if someone doesn't want a kid, why would you want to force them to be a parent? Not only is that going to be difficult for the person who is the parent, but that's going to be terrible on the child. And there's actual science behind it. Or not just science, but, like, actual studies on the dissatisfaction of livelihoods and the long-term effects on the children of children who are unwanted by their parents. And it's unfortunate. And that is some of the stuff that I actually researched for that. You are having a child, but you aren't willing to accept them being different from you. And that can apply for, like, every, like, it can apply for any type of, difference between a parent and a child. It can apply to if someone's LGBTQ, it can apply if someone wants to date someone who is a different ethnicity than themselves. If you're having a child and you're not willing to accept they might be different than you, I don't think that's a great idea, and I think that's another aspect of unethical parenthood. But a couple more is, like, expecting your child to be something as a result of your untreated past problems. Like, this isn't necessarily related to belief systems or any of that, but, like, having a child and then expecting them to be a doctor because you wanted to be a doctor when you were younger and you didn't have the resources to be a doctor. Or having a child and expecting them to go into the family business, whatever that may be, I don't know, a restaurant, owning an airline, I have no idea, but why are you expecting someone to do the dream that you were supposed to want? Another aspect, not more, but another aspect of unethical parenthood is, like, having a child because you can't stand being alone. And if you need a therapist, get a therapist. If you need to pay somebody to be your friend, don't give birth to somebody to be your friend. Look around. I would say that's my those are aspects of what makes up unethical parenthood, in my opinion, and just in general. So now on to the next part, what leads to, unethical parenthood, like these types of behaviors, or just in general, people having children when they probably should not be, and everything. Like, there's so many reasons for that. How are you gonna child? Not every parent deserves a child. That's not every single parent. I do think it's a lot of those who engage in a lot of very unethical parenthood-related behaviors, as I've discussed before, but there are exceptions. So, not all parents are, like, really bad. You know, there are shades of gray, when it comes to parenthood and whatnot. Obviously, it's gonna be like, oh, well, yeah, no duh, I should've not had a kid if I wasn't financially stable, but I didn't learn financial stability because no one in my family knew it because they were really financially not well off for many years, and were neglectful in that regard and let me suffer or whatever. There is nuance to it. But the way I view it is, every day you wake up, it's another chance to make your life better than it was before. And if you have a parent who's continuously, like, they have opportunities to improve. They have that choice every day to improve. I know I never really liked whenever I heard people be like, you can just decide to be happy. That's not how depression works, and whatnot. So I'm not talking about mental illness in that case. I'm just saying, as a person, like morality-wise, because you can be depressed and be a good person. Because there's a difference between someone who's depressed and is kind of terrible, and someone who's depressed and, you know, that's just an aspect of their life. I would say the determinant is, who are they blaming? And are they hurting people intentionally? Just because you're mentally ill, it's not necessarily an excuse for you to straight up just be a terrible person. It's understandable for if your parent was done dirty by their parents, and their parents before them did it, and their parents before them did it, but it's important to focus on what they're doing now, and the consistent behaviors that they've done since then, and if they're actively trying to improve. I think that's what makes the difference between a terrible parent and a parent who's, well, definitely they could have done things differently. They had a lot more time, but it's not necessarily the worst. You know, I think there's levels to this stuff. Pull out that meme, there's levels to this. But I think there's the kind that are like, I'm actively making my children's lives worse, and I'm not trying to benefit at all, and then I'm gonna blame them as well. And that's what I would like to think as the entitlement, man or woman, child, final boss of parenthood. And then there is the middle ground of parents, the ones that, you know, like, they definitely could have done more. You know, they probably had a decent work ethic. You know, it's like a B student, a BC, like, they passed. You're not failing, because at least the failure over there, like, they're blaming me continuously for the problem, but also you're not, like, doing a lot to fix yours, but at least you're not, like, putting it on me to where I'm like, oh, the boot's on my throat and I'm dying. You know, but, like, it's kind of like microplastics. It's gonna get in my body and kill me either mentally and physically slowly. And it's because you don't really want to do the work to take the microplastics out of your blood. Because you're kind of lazy in that regard. But it's not necessarily because you're, like, really evil, but, like, you definitely are a little lazy in the emotional area. So I think that's a pretty core difference. And then there's like the, oh yeah, like they're a good parent, they were just really screwed over and then they've actively tried since then. It doesn't have to be every single time. Because like I said, there's levels to it. Maybe there's this perfect parent that every single time they try to be better. But I think that's an unrealistic standard. We're circling back. We already went over what I define as unethical parenthood overall. And then now we've gone into what leads into it. So now we're going to go into the long-term effects of, like, what happens if you actually have a child that you don't want. As I already stated before, my references are going to be in my YouTube video after this one in regards to the topic, as I usually do for every single topic that I research. Because it's good to have your links. And I know someone's gonna be like, well, even if I was wanted, it's not like I had the most ethical childhood anyways. Oh, there's definitely long-term detrimental effects to that as well. I'm not saying just because you were wanted doesn't mean it's like everything was sunshine and rainbows. The research I'm quoting is from the University of Michigan. It stated when a woman has a baby she doesn't want, that child's self-esteem is likely to suffer more than 2 decades later, according to the University of Michigan study. So this is due to, the parent not investing as much time or emotional energy into it because they didn't have it, because they didn't want the child, which again is very sad, but it happens, and years later they end up having lower self-esteem. I know some countries are getting really concerned at like low birth rates, and it's kind of dystopian how I've even seen a couple of people online that are like, oh well, people should be forced to have kids now. That's terrifying, number one. No, you shouldn't be forced to have a child that you don't even want. What are you talking about? Against your will? Not only does it mess with them, psychologically speaking, physically speaking, if a woman has a child she doesn't want, it's gonna screw them over. It's gonna screw them over initially. A lot. In physical ways, not just psychological, because also in that study in regards to unwanted children in pregnancy and motherhood, in that one, well actually it's not that one, it's the National Library of Medicine. This is a different resource that I am quoting. But for this one, the children who were not wanted in regards to pregnancy, I'm sorry, I have to reread this one more time. So, with an unwanted pregnancy, especially, she is more likely, the mother, to expose the fetus to harmful substances by smoking tobacco and drinking alcohol. The child of an unwanted conception is at greater risk of weighing less than 2,500 grams at birth, of dying in its first year of life, of being abused, and of not receiving sufficient resources of healthy development. The mother may be at greater risk of physical abuse herself, and her relationship with her partner is at greater risk of dissolution due to this unwanted pregnancy. So not only is that child going to dislike themselves for 2 decades, at the minimum, they are at a greater risk of several health effects and just abuse. You're gonna force people to have children that aren't even gonna be able to live that long. That might have physical disabilities. It's bad fundamentally for the ethical reason of that's an individual and that's their life. But it's really sad that in America and in the world in general, you have to bring in the possibility of economics for it to make a difference at all. Because I hate that I'm even thinking about this as an addition to my argument, because you should just take it at face value. I shouldn't have to bring in the fact that it would cost more money to have children that aren't even wanted than, like, I shouldn't have to bring that up. That should not even have to be in the argument for me to make the argument. It should just, oh, that child would feel bad for 20 years, and it would significantly stunt their entire growth and be abused. That should be the focus of it. It shouldn't be that the fact that they're probably gonna have terrible health problems as well, which is not even gonna be good. And I know some parents, like from the boomer generation or any of that, like they have their kids as their retirement plan. You're probably gonna be taking care of that kid. They would probably be taking care of that child because of the health problems. And it's so depressing to think about. What if that mother or that father or whatever that didn't want to have that child? What if they were supposed to go on and do that dream? What if they weren't actually supposed to hang up their stuff and put their dream of being a doctor in the closet just to raise some kids because they felt like they weren't ever good enough to be able to do it? What if they actually did that instead of having their child? What if they actually saved more lives than that? I know there's a big argument of like, oh, well, what if that child who died was the doctor who cured cancer? What if the parent of a child that was unwanted actually had the ability to go to school to do their dreams and not drop out because they had a child that they didn't want in the first place? What if that person cured cancer? If you have a child, you have someone dependent on you for their life. You can't just go up and disappear. But I don't think that's what should happen. I think the people who didn't want those children should have the ability to not have those children and go on and be that doctor, or they go on and be that director. Not only do they have the resentment of the dreams they never aspired to, but they're projecting it onto a child that never asked for it in the first place. Destroying the dreams of two people, and the one that doesn't even know what they want yet. This entire section is me discussing how unethical parenthood is different from antinatalism, the definition. I'm not actually using the Oxford English Dictionary as I usually do. This time we're actually using the Cambridge Dictionary when it comes to antinatalism. So, given the state of the economy in the world, using your logic, there won't be any children anymore in the world. Like, if we say not to have children because the economy's bad, then no one should have a child. Ever. Now, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying ever. That's antinatalism. That's the difference between unethical parenthood and antinatalism. So, the Cambridge definition is the belief that it is morally wrong to have children, or that people should be encouraged to not have children. And I guess by that definition, unethical parenthood could be considered antinatalist because it's, encouraging people to not have children in some respects. But again, the first half of it is more like the belief that it's morally wrong to have children. When I am calling for ethical parenthood, it is not to say that people should never have children. I just think you shouldn't have children if you can't have the children. I know that's very vague, but it's like, if you can't plan, if you can't take care of it, you can't get it. I know, someone's gonna be like, well, if you're saying that poor people can't have children, that's a classist take token. What are you talking about? No. And also, I grew up in a pretty bad situation myself. I don't want to get into the details because that's my personal life. But coming from somebody who didn't have a lot growing up in general, that's not a classist take to say don't have a kid if you can't afford it. That's not classist. You're just upset about somebody pointing out that you want to use your child as a retirement plan, even though you have the time and the energy to make your situation better for the person that you supposedly love. I just don't believe you. I do not believe you if you're looking at me. You look me in the face and you say that you love your hypothetical child that you have, but yet you will put all of their debt on their head? That is not love, that's manipulation. That's what that is. Well, I was poor as a kid. Just because you were poor as a kid, that doesn't excuse the fact that you got a gambling addiction as an adult. Okay, BoJack, it's not the drugs, it's not your friends, it's not something terrible that happened in your childhood, it's not your parents, it's you. You're the reason that you are struggling, and it's your problem, and you need to stop blaming other people about it. That's what I think about when I think about those parents that are that grow up in poverty and then they say, well, it's just because the system is so bad and we don't, and we try. As someone who is poor, your life can get better if you, how can you look at your kid and just be like, yeah, you deserve to live in roaches? that just causes such a visceral anger in me. Not because I'm particularly parental in any kind of way, but you can look a kid in the eye and be like, you deserve to live in roaches and it's your fault. What type of evil you gotta have in you? What are you talking about? That's not because the government was behind on one payment one time. That's not why you said that to that kid. Which I don't think it is. Actually, maybe there is some diabolical parents out there that'll say that. That's terrible. If you're a parent and you said that to your child, honestly, jail. Cause what are you talking about? Oh my gosh. So what do you do about it? This is all doom and gloom, right? Yeah. It's all terrible. No, I don't want it to be terrible. And I think it's a systematic issue. Oh, yes, I say it multiple times. And it's true, though. I think it's a systematic issue. What are we gonna do about it? How do you fix this? Well, as I previously discussed regarding other issues, like mental health and, taking care of yourself, in regards to relationships, I think you should care for yourself first. Before you have a child, I think you should care for yourself. I think there should be a different class, or it doesn't even have to be a different class. I think there should be at least one class in school, not just in college or something, but in K through 12, that people have to take, that have all of these life things that, you're not just gonna learn, that people don't learn through school regularly. They don't learn how to take care of themselves, with the mindfulness and signs of a relationship not being healthy or that it's gonna end up bad later on. They don't know those things sometimes because they have a terrible support system. And, they don't know, because not only would it help them teach finances to themselves, not only would it help them learn, finances for their children, they would learn finances for themselves. But, again, good parents exist and everything, and I'm not saying that they don't, but if you're leaving, so much debt, and you're financially irresponsible, and you're abusive, and all, that's not a good parent. I don't care how much you say that you love the kid, you're lying. You're lying straight through your teeth. I don't like this argument of, you can't tell me I don't love my kid. You can't tell me I don't love my blank or whatever. You don't. Because I think that's an excuse to avoid accountability for the terrible things that they've done to that child. I think it's so depressing that, you can grow up with all of these idealistic views, and, the movies don't get it wrong. It's so weird that human beings can get it so right in the movies. It's because we have the ability to see what life could be and how people can be. How the human spirit can be is so amazing, strong, lovable, all of this. And then the decision to do otherwise, that active decision, I think that's what evil is. Not necessarily choosing to not be kind all the time, but the active decision to just be continuously bad, on, again and again and again and again and again and again. Not only is that evil, that's so tiring. It's not like you even get a lot out of being evil. It's actually worse for you, health-wise. I'm actually not quoting a study for that, but I know it is. I know that's not even healthy for you. It's not even a benefit. It's just for the love of the game, and it's not even a good game. Now, I talk about possibly mandating an educational course for somebody to pass to have a child. Well, not to have a child, but when they are made aware, as in healthcare is aware that they have the child, or that their partner is pregnant with the child, or whatever. Then they can be given the course and like the study materials that are free or whatever, and then be required to pass this thing. And if they don't pass it, it's not necessarily like, oh, you're gonna go to jail or something, but like you have to at least be signed on and actively participating. If anyone has any other like ideas about how to make it to where people are more educated regarding to it, because like there's the whole like you're required to take it in high school. My main concern with that is like maybe you learn it in high school and then you have a kid like 5 years later and you don't remember the things that you learned when you were in high school because it's been years since you were in high school. Because I mean, I learned a little, but again, it's not like an egregious amount of information that they'd have to remember or anything. It's just more or less like, oh, you have to, like, oh, this is generally the same thing. I think it's good that they would always have, like, supplemental stuff that could be updated frequently, but to at least always have the standard of this is healthcare, this is finances, here's opportunities regarding, like, education, long-term, not even just education, but like other opportunities for other career paths that they want to choose. Like if they have a child that wants to be an entrepreneur and have a business, or they want to be an influencer, or they want to be an actor, or whatever it is. I do want to bring up earlier about like how I discussed this applies to pet parents as well. I think there should be something similar to it. My main issue is with hamster owners that don't take care of their hamsters, or, like betta fish owners who don't take care of their betta fish, or just fish owners who put them in a really small tank or whatever. Because I would say people generally know how to take care of a dog. If that is my polarizing opinion, but a dog, literally all they do is love you. They love you so much. I'm gonna cry. But like, they don't hurt people. But, like, I can understand people disliking other human beings, because people can be pretty terrible at times. But dogs? Animals? The cages that hamsters are kept in are far too small for them. They're far too small. And it's a lot easier to have a cat or a dog if general knowledge of how to care for it. Don't get it if you can't care for it, in my opinion. That applies to humans and animals of all kinds and sizes. Right, so, according to the Blue Cross, the minimum space for a hamster should be around 3.2 feet by 1.6 feet. Now think of those hamster containers at pet stores. It's so unethical. It's so unethical. Oh my gosh. That was about everything from this stream today on the topic of unethical parenthood. Just for a summary, for anyone who joined later on in the stream or just watching the video, today we discussed about, what unethical parenting is and what it means in the long-term care of a child when they shouldn't or whatever they're unwanted on both not only the parent but the child themselves. And then the difference between unethical parenthood as a concept and antinatalism, and how antinatalism is more like don't ever have children because it's unethical, whereas unethical parenthood is ensuring that the environment is ethical or good before having a child, and then what can be done. And if you disagree with my opinion on what can be done, I would love for you to figure out how to solve terrible childhoods. I would love for people to figure that out. I'm not saying I can solve it. I think it should be talked about, though. Anyway, so, that is what we discussed today, and I really hope you enjoyed the stream or the video, whichever version of this that you're deciding to watch today. As per usual, you can look at the number up here, you can call, you can add your opinion on it, or just talk about anything, and then if you scan the link to the QR code, you can go to my email regarding it, or you can add to the form that I have, and I have all of my other social medias there, as I usually do. But anyway, I really hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope the rest of your day goes well. This has been Token, and this is Theta. I hope you all have a good one. Token today, and this purgatory face call in to create my number awaits.